My expectations, I would say that what I wanted to do is that I wanted to make that shift from humanities to urban practice or urban planning. And so I really thought that UFP would be like the perfect sort of middle stepping stone for me to do that, in order of building networks, knowing more about the city. And so in that way, I think that it's definitely been fulfilled, yeah. I do think our class was pretty diverse in terms of like the geography, as well as socioeconomic background, I would say. Um, and I do think that it's brought quite a bunch of different experiences to the learning. I feel like there were a lot of things that I personally did not, that don't occur to me, coming from a city or coming from a certain background. But then there were others that did, and that made for a more well rounded experience, I would say. The thing that I took away from all this interdisciplinarity is that uh, it felt like there were endless points of entry into a certain topic or into a certain class that we were doing, and so that made the transition a little bit more comfortable for me, right? Because I was also around like people from an architecture background. I was around from like a lot of different backgrounds, and like I would go through it with my humanities thinking. I would say, talk about people, talk about processes, and then they would supplement that sort of thinking by adding on to it by, like, I don't know, like the physical space, the physical infrastructure, things that I didn't really think about. And in terms of how the classes are structured, I think having like 5 or 6 people take a class at the same time also really helped, because it allowed for that kind of dynamic sort of conversational teaching that's happening, where one person will jump in and say, oh, from another perspective or something like that. So in that way, I think it just made for a very like sort of dynamic learning structure. I do think that starting with the commons was a real like was good, because the commons, it feels like, now that I'm at the tail end of the program, it feels like we were building up to something, right? So the commons started out as a sort of a foundational structure, and there were a lot of things I didn't know, and then there were a lot of things that I did know. And so I think in that way, it was quite beneficial for me. The electives as well, I think having the freedom to choose what I wanted to focus on was helpful. It feels like I have a lot of knowledge about like certain different sectors. Some people choose to choose all of their electives like towards a certain goal. My goal was sort of to, you know, take up as many like interesting things as I want, as I could. So in that way, I think my electives experience would be a lot different than someone else's who had like a clear end goal or end set of knowledge in mind. I think in terms of skill, I would talk about how my language has changed. Um, I mean, I've always been used to using like sort of technical jargon, like subject specific language, right? But coming to UFP, it's definitely changed towards like the more spatial ends of things. I think, which also translates into how I observe things around me. Like, I don't know. If at a time when I would have said, oh, what's the, I don't know, social composition of this locality, now I'd be asking about like the infrastructure or, other forms of, who built this area, stuff like that. And so, I think the biggest sort of skill that I would take away is um, just observing the urban through a spatial lens is like one of my biggest takeaways. The other stuff is there as well. I mean, in terms of trying to talk to people, like interpersonal skills, things like that, I would say I've improved. But my technical knowledge is, I think, my greatest takeaway. I have some really, really good memories. And I think the specific set of people that I was with as well, we always like do something or the other, like Friday nights for movie screening nights. We have a cinephile club. Um, and we always like, we had a going away from stanza sort of get together. We had a secret Santa, we had like a Christmas gift exchange, just things like that. And it really helps to build that kind of connection. You wouldn't think there are 40 people and you like every single one of them. I think all of us spend about 80% of our time at BCC. Um, it's real, like there's a degree of like homemaking that goes into it at this point. Like, especially in the reading weeks, if you see everyone's like dragging the beanbags around, sleeping in the back of the class, things like that. I think in terms of like just life around, I think you start to build like a sort of routine, right? In the evenings, we go and eat bhel puri from that bhel puri guy downstairs, or just taking a walk, or evening grocery run to Janta Bazaar. I think those are the things that stand out the most to me. Other than that, I think it's a space that allows for communication and that allows for that kind of networking. Um, you can just like strike up a conversation with anybody, and especially like in the events downstairs, there's been times when at least one of us is always like going crazy about like one, like I don't know, outside speaker that's come, that whose work we really admire and things like that. The people, absolutely, like not just my like you know fellow fellows. I think also the faculty, also just everybody that I've met. um, I think that it really like supplements the education that we're getting. Like I loved the courses as well. Coming from a humanities background and being like generally like a go with the flow sort of a person, I came here to learn as much as I wanted, and I came here to like go for whatever like felt the best to me. And so in terms of that, I think I would have learned a lot of things no matter which courses I was in. But I really do think that the people and the level of discussion that happens is what really made the UFA for me. For a young person in her early 20s, I see myself hopefully living in a bunch of different cities around the world, like, or actually even around India. Like, it doesn't matter, I just want to be in a new space every few months. I have my internship coming up, and then I'm hoping I can move out of Hyderabad and go to another city. And actually, in terms of internship, I think I I don't have a set goal, but I just really want to be able to build up the skills that I do have, be it like research or, like going out into the field, collecting that kind of data, like doing ethnography the right way. In terms of that, I think I see myself in the next year at least trying to scale up my any form of skills that I do have to the best of my ability.